Nintendo is out for blood right now. Nintendo just updated their EULA recently, which for me and you, EULA stands for End Users License Agreement. But for Nintendo, it stands for Earn Us Lots of Alimony. So y'all better be ready to pay Big Daddy, cause he's not backing down. They updated two major parts of what Nintendo services are gonna be looking like moving into the launch of Nintendo Switch 2. And I'm gonna read them out loud so we can all look at this together. Section number 2, license. Subject to the terms of this agreement, Nintendo grants you a non-exclusive, non-transferable, revocable license to use the Nintendo account services solely for your personal and non-commercial use. For clarity, the Nintendo account services are licensed, not sold to you, and you may not make use of the Nintendo account services except expressly authorized by this agreement. Without limitation, you agree that you may not A, publish, copy, modify, reverse engineer, lease, rent, decompile, or create derivative works of any portion of Nintendo account services. B, bypass, modify, decrypt, defeat, tamper with, or otherwise circumvent any of the functions or protections of the Nintendo account services, including through the use of any hardware or software that would cause the Nintendo account services to operate other than its accordance with its documentation and intended use. C, obtain, install, or use any unauthorized copies of Nintendo's account services. Or D, exploit the Nintendo account services in any manner other than to use them in accordance with applicable documentation and intended use. In each case, without Nintendo's written consent or express authorization unless otherwise expressed permissible by applicable law. You acknowledge that if you fail to comply with the foregoing restrictions, Nintendo may render the Nintendo account services and or the applicable Nintendo device permanently unusable or in part or whole. They will brick your system. They will brick your brand new Nintendo Switch 2 or Nintendo Switch with this updated EULA. But it doesn't stop there, because in Section 8 they stated digital items. As a part of Nintendo account services, Nintendo or third parties may make certain digital content or items available to you. If you buy or acquire the digital items, you obtain a limited license. Other than this limited license, you have no right or title in the or to the digital items. Digital items cannot be sold, transferred to a third party unless permitted by Nintendo, which that's not happening, and cannot be exchanged or converted for cash or legal tender for any goods or services outside of Nintendo services. Oh my God, it's happening. This is Nintendo preparing. When they launched Nintendo Switch 1, they made a lot of mistakes. Hackers figured out how to get into that system within months. The first patchable exploit was found April 23rd of 2018. They were able to get stuff running, and by the middle to end of that same year in 2018, we had full custom firmware loaded on Nintendo Switch. And as y'all know, piracy ran rampant. Nintendo went crazy with the types of things they were doing, and we saw a bunch of leaks from the company. I mean, remember this? This is a Venn diagram of what they were gonna do to reach out to a notorious Nintendo Switch modder. This was just a Venn diagram on what the Nintendo Spec Ops agents were gonna do to arrive to his house. And then do you remember Team Executor? Who got Team Executed? Gary Bowser. It's funny because if you look up who got arrested on Team Executor, it states that Doug Bowser was the one that did, because AI is just stupid. If you dig a little deeper into it, Gary Bowser is a name you're gonna see pop up over and over and over again, because that is Nintendo's biggest win against Nintendo modding and piracy on their console. He got arrested for 40 months for modifying, decrypting, basically promoting the wholesale of Team Executor's jigs and softwares that allowed you to basically hack and create custom firmware for your Nintendo Switch consoles. And Nintendo even won over Gary Bowser in the fact of making him have to pay $14 million in damages and fines against their company for basically releasing these modified chips, which that's a lot. $14 million? Damn. He states something very crazy to the general public about the way he was arrested. The day that it happened, I was sleeping in my bed. It was 4 in the morning and I'd been drinking all night. And suddenly I wake up and see 3 people surrounding my bed with rifles aimed at my head. They dragged me out of the place and pulled me back to a pickup truck and drove me to Interpol office. Damn! Nintendo will put anybody on the chopping block. You can see that with the digital games that they're creating now, with the Arc System leaks, which showed that developers only had to choose between 3 options: the Nintendo Switch cartridge, a digital edition for their game, or the new Nintendo digital cartridge that doesn't actually have the game on it but the license. They're basically forcing this on Arc System. And if they were forcing this on Arc System, they were pushing this to other developers, furthermore locking down the security of the Nintendo Switch 2 and making sure that hardware sales and software sales are 100% across the board. The Nintendo Switch 1 was hacked by a freaking paperclip. The MIG Switch chip, which was basically just an R4 flash card that you could load video games on and pop into any unmodded Nintendo Switch, that got out of hand. Bans were happening left and right. Nintendo started putting all of the servers that basically house these digital games on the chopping block. This is the beginning. This is the start of something that is going to be a battle. The updates to this EULA are things that Nintendo should have had in line back when Nintendo Switch 1 was out, but they just didn't know how comparable their system was going to be at that time. Now Nintendo's ready. They have their new beast of a system, their new beast of a games. They have something worth a while. They have a way to lock developers into developing on these specific chipsets that are probably cheaper and better on a wholesale market. And it's about to get crazy because anybody that dares touch their Nintendo Switch consoles to mod it, to basically make it any way else other than what it's supposed to be, which is just a console, they're about to get their clapped. There's gonna be some team destined to go out there and modify their Nintendo Switch consoles. There's some team that's destined to release the modifications under an alias or something like that. It always happens, right? But the piracy war with Nintendo and the modification war with Nintendo is about to go ballistic. And you all need to pay attention because it's about to get crazy. If you get your Nintendo Switch banned, it's basically a hardware ban for Nintendo Switch 1. If you get your Nintendo Switch 2 banned though, that might be both an account ban and a hardware ban and a brick, because Nintendo now reserves the right to clap your Nintendo Switch globally from wherever they want. They can snipe you from around the corner if they want to. So, yeah, that's it. That's all I had to talk about. We got some unfinished business to deal with our little friend JT though.